Hi everyone, this is Mr Mohid, and today we're going to be going over the Unit 2 Algebra checkout test for the HA module. Again, this is the higher module, and we're going to be looking at the questions that you guys should have answered at home last week. So let's make a start. So these are the topics on the test. You should have all this in front of you right now. If you've got a different color pen, just get it out and we'll mark it together. So let's start with question 1. So in this question, we need to expand the double bracket. So all you do is you multiply everything outside by everything inside. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is plus 4x. 3 times x is 3x. And then 3 times by positive 4 is positive 12. Now you've expanded it, you just need to simplify it. So you've got x squared, 4x at 3x is 7x plus 12. So that's your full marks there. 1 mark for this bit, 1 mark for that. If you got this bit right in one go, you can have both the marks. Question 2. So you've got a trapezium here, and it's asking you to calculate the size of the largest angle in the trapezium. Now the problem with this is that we don't know what x is, but we can work it out. To work out the value of x, you need to realize that in a quadrilateral, in a four-sided shape, all the angles add up to 360 degrees. Once you know that, you can equate all the angles together. So you can add all the angles together and equate it to 360. Remember, this is a right angle, so that's 90, and let's start adding them together. So you have x add x, that's going to be 2x. 50 at 10, so that's 60. 90 at 90 is going to give you 180. Let's just show our working out there. Once you've got that, if you collect all these terms together and add them together, you get 2x. 180 at 60, 240, and you need to equal that to 360 because angles in a quadrilateral, as mentioned before, add up to 360. Once you've got that, you're going to solve to find x. So to solve it, you just take away 240 from both sides, and you're left with 2x is equal to 360 take away 240 is 120, and then you're going to divide both sides by 2, and you're left with x is equal to 60. Once you've found x, we've not finished yet. You need to go back to the questionnaire and see what it's asking you to find. It says calculate the size of the largest angle. So all you're going to do is you're going to substitute this x into all the angles. So substitute x equals 60, and let's see what that gives us. When x is 60 there, you have 60 plus 50, that's 110. Then you've got 60 plus 10, which is 70. So clearly you can see that the angle 110 is the largest angle because these are 90 and this is 70. So the largest angle is going to be 110 degrees. So we just write largest angle is 110 degrees. So that's your final answer. So in order to get these marks, it's worth 5 marks. The first mark would be if you collected the like terms together. So you have 2x plus 240, that's the first mark. If you equated that to 360, that's your second mark. The third mark is when you've found out what x is, and as long as you've got some sort of working out there, that's your fourth mark. And the last mark is you need to substitute in to find the largest value of x, which is 110. So that's 5 marks. Question 2. That was question 3. Question 3 asks us to rearrange 5x minus 3 to make x the subject. So all we're going to do in this case is rearrange it all to make it say x equals. So at the moment we've got minus 3 there, so to remove that we add 3 to both sides. So you're left with y, add 3 equals to 5x. Then in order to get rid of this 5 times x, we're going to divide both sides by 5. And then we're left with y plus 5 divided by, y plus 3 divided by 5 equals x. So your answer is this. Obviously, a lot of people prefer writing it this way around, so I'll just do that. Oops, I keep writing 5x is equal to y plus 3 divided by 5. So that's your final answer for that question. Question B is slightly trickier in that we have an expression on the denominator of this fraction. But all we do is we group it together and we remove it from both sides. At the moment it's w divided by w minus 5. So remove that by timesing both sides by w minus 5. When you do that, the right hand side fraction will cancel out. So on the right hand side you'll be left with just w, and on this left hand side you times it by w minus 5 and you're left with this. The next step is you expand the bracket, so you have gw minus 5g equals w. Now the next part, the question is asking you to find out what w is. So we're going to collect all the w's together. So I'm going to go up here. So if I move this 5g to that side by adding 5g to both sides, I'm left with gw is equal to w, I'm adding 5g to both sides, so it'll be plus 5g. Then I'm going to get this w onto this side, so they're all together. Gw take away w equals 5g. And the next step, this step a lot of people do forget, and the step you need to do is to factorize. So you have to put it in a bracket. So the w is common, bring it out, minus 1 equals 5g. And the last step, you're just going to simply divide it. So divide both sides by g minus 1. So you're left with w equals 5g over g minus 1. And that should be your answer for question 3b. So you get the marks. The first mark you'd get is for multiplying both sides by w minus 5. The second mark is going to be when you've rearranged everything and you factorize it. So that's your second mark. And the last mark is for the final answer. If you got the final mark using another method, it's fine. You still get the final answer mark. Now this one it looks pretty simple, but it's quite tricky. First things first, you need to recognize this is the difference of two squares. You have a square there, 6 squared is 36, an x squared there, and a 2 squared, which is 4. So the difference of two squares. So you might have heard of this, or a square minus a square. So the difference of two squares. So if you want to factorize this, there are various methods of doing it. You could do the following. You square root the 36, you square root the x, you square root the 4, so that's a minus, square root of 4 is 2, and then you can just leave it as the same thing but the conjugate version. In other words, the same thing as before but the opposite sign. So you can leave it like that. So that's your final answer. So it's the difference of two squares. The second one's a slightly easier version. So the square root of b squared is b. The square root of 121 is 11. And then all you do is you do the conjugate of that, which is the same thing but the opposite sign. And there's your 2 marks. Factorize and solve x squared plus 8x plus 15. So again, there's a couple of methods you can use. I'm just going to use the trial and error method. So you're going to factorize, which means to put it inside a bracket. It's a quadratic, that's why we have 2 brackets. So x there and x there. We need 2 numbers that multiply to give me 15, but at the same time these 2 numbers have to add to give me 8. So I'm just going to try different numbers and see if it works. Let's see if it works first time round. 2 numbers at times to give me 15. I'm going to try 5 and 3. And then to see if those 2 add up to give me 8, let's see, 5 at 3, that will give me 8. And they'll both be positive because they're all positive there. I factorized it. That's my first mark. the next mark is to find what x is, so we have to solve it. So if you cover one of them, you cover one and you get x plus 5 equals 0. This implies that x is equal to negative 5. That's the second mark. Then you cover the other one, you have x plus 3 equals to 0, which implies that x is equal to minus 3. There's your third mark. So that's how you factorize and solve. So question number 6. So the question asks us to work out the length of one side of the square, and the diagram shows a square. Okay, so first thing you need to know is the properties of a square. The properties of a square is that all the lengths are equal. If you didn't know that, that's not going to help you because you'll struggle with the rest of the question. So what we need to do is, since all the lengths are equal and we've got expressions here, ideally we need to find out what x is so that we can find the length. So since all the sides are equal, we can now equate the two lengths together for our first mark. That's the first mark. Then we're going to solve it. Before we solve it, I'm just going to tidy this section up a bit. 3x minus 3 equals 3x plus 3. I've just expanded that. Collect all the x's to one side, so I'm going to shift that over there so it becomes a take away 3x. 7x take away 3x is going to be 4x. I'm going to shift that minus 3 over there and it becomes a positive 3. 3 add 3 is 6. And then lastly, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And I'm left with x is equal to 6 divided by 4, which is 3 over 2. And if you want to be really posh, you can write it as a fraction, as a decimal, and write 1.5. Either answer is fine. So x is 1.5. Now we know what x is. So since x is 1.5, we need to find out what one side of the square is. So I'm just going to substitute into any one of those. I'll probably substitute into that. That one looks a bit easier. So I've got 3 brackets 1.5 plus 1. So that's going to be 3 times by 2.5. And then when you work that out, that will give you the answer for that question. So that's going to be 7.5 centimeters. So that's the answer. So to get the marks for this one, you get the first mark for equating them, the second mark for rearranging it, the third mark for finding what the third mark for finding what x is, then substituting it in back into to find one of the lengths, and the final mark is for the answer. Question 7 asks us to prove n plus 6 all squared minus n plus 2 all squared is always a multiple of 8. Now that sounds really complicated, but all you need to do is just expand the bracket step by step. If you expand that, so n plus 6 squared is n plus 6 times n plus 6 minus n plus 2 n plus 2. So we're just going to expand that. So similar to what we did before, everything outside by everything inside. And then I'm going to do a quick shortcut because I know the answer. So it's going to be n squared plus 2 times the product, which is 12n, plus 36 for that bracket. I'll group them together, minus n squared plus 4n plus 4 for that bracket. That will get you the first mark. The second mark is for simplifying it. Now you can be careful because there's a negative sign that we're taking away here. N squared take away n squared, that will cancel out. 12n take away 4n, 12 take away 4, n is going to give me 8n. And then 36 take away 4 is going to give me positive 32. Okay, that's my second mark. Now the third mark is we need to show it's a multiple of 8. We can see it's a multiple of 8 because both these numbers are going to can be divided by 8. But in order to show it, all we do is we factorize it. to just point out the obvious, that is obvious. So 8 is a common factor, n plus 4, and you can say this is a multiple of 8. So a little comment to say multiple of 8. There's your final mark. And that's it. So we've proved that question. Question number 6. Expand and simplify. So it's just two single brackets. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Minus 2 times x is minus 2x. Minus 2 times 5 is minus 10. That's your first mark. Then we simplify it by collecting the terms. 3x take away 2x is 1x, so I can just write x. Minus 12 take away 10 is going to give me minus 22, and that's my second mark. Next question says solve the simultaneous equations. So this question can be done depending on which one you want to eliminate. So if I want to eliminate the y's, so if I want to get rid of the y's, I'm going to make these both the same number. So I need to multiply the first equation by 3 and the second equation by 4, so I can get 15 as my common variable. So when I times this one by 3, I times everything by 3, so the whole of the equation, plus 15 equals 3. Now I'm going to multiply this equation by 5, 10x minus 15y equals 7 times by 5, which is 35. So now I have my y's that are the same. I can eliminate it. Now in order to eliminate the y's, because one is a positive, one is a negative, I can simply add the two equations together. So 9 add 10 is going to give me 19, and then there's an x there. That will cancel out. 3 add 35 is 38. Then I can divide both sides by 19. And remember, this paper you can use a calculator, so but you should be able to do this anyway. 38 divided by 19 is going to give you 2. So x is equal to 2. Put a box around it. So that's your first mark for eliminating. The second mark for x equals 2. And to get the third mark, we're just going to substitute x equals 2 into any one of the two equations. So you can either choose the first one or the second one. So I'm going to choose the first one because it looks nice and easy. So you'd get the same mark, same answer, even if you substitute into the second one. So 3 times by 2, because x is 2, plus 5y is equal to 1. 6 plus 5y equals 1. Take away 6 from both sides. 1 take away 6 is minus 5. And then divide both sides by 5. Y is going to be equal to minus 1. And there's your third mark. Moving on. On the number line below, show the inequality y is greater than minus 2 and less than 3. So simple, all you need to do is you're going to put a circle on minus 2 and a circle on 3. Join them up with a straight line, and that's your answer. You wouldn't color these in because there's no equal sign there. If it was less than or equal to, you'd shade the circle in. But in this case, you don't have to. 1 mark for each circle and then the line. Solve the inequality. Well, you just solve it like a normal equation. Imagine that's an equal sign. So all you'll have to do is look for the smallest x and remove that from both sides. So let's get rid of the 5x from both sides. 9 take away 5 is 4x, plus 4 is less than minus 14. Then I'm going to remove the 4 from both sides by subtracting 4. 4x is less than minus 18. And then the last step, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. X is less than minus 18 over 4, which is minus 9 over 2, which is the same as 4.5, so minus 4.5. You can have any of those two answers. Okay, 1 mark for the working out, the other mark for that. Now I've made a deliberate mistake on that so that you can see what you probably have made. Anyone, if you can figure it out, well done. If not, here it is. Notice how everything has the inequality sign on apart from the answer. One of the most common mistake is students forget to put the inequality sign back in. So your final answer should be x is less than minus 4.5. Make sure you maintain that inequality sign, otherwise it won't be correct. Question C. Y is an integer. Write down all the solutions of the inequality 2y is greater than or equal to minus 8 or less than 0. The word integer just means whole number. Whole number. So write down the solutions. So the solutions for y, so we need to work out what y is and all the numbers in between. Here it says 2y. So in order to get rid of that, let's divide both sides by 2y. So we're left with y is greater than or equal to 8 divided by 2 is minus 4, and 0 divided by 2 is just 0. So this is my integer. These are the integers that I need to write down in this range. So that's the first mark. So y can be bigger than or equal to minus 4, but less than 0. So I'm going to list all these numbers. Minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1. And I've got 0 there. However, I shouldn't include that because just like the 4 has got the greater than or equal to sign next to it, this has only got a less than sign. So you don't include the 4. So your final answer is that. Question 11. And remember, with these questions, if you're really stuck, you can use a calculator to help you, but most of them you should be able to do without. So in this question, we've got a quadratic equation there, and it says to fill in the table below. So in order to do that, we're going to just substitute. I'll start with the easy number, 0. 0 squared is 0, plus 2 times 0 is 0, add 1 is 1. When x is equal to, where's it gone? When x is equal to 1, 1 squared is 1, plus 2 times 1 is 2, add 1, and the answer to that is 4. When x is equal to 2, 2 squared is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, add 1 is 9. 3 squared is 9, 2 times 3 is 6, add 1, that's 15, add 1 is 16. And these are a little bit tricky because they're negative. Minus 1 times minus 1 is positive 1, plus minus 1 times 2 is negative 2, so minus there, plus 1. So we have 1 minus 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Here we have minus 2 squared, which is positive 4, plus 2 times by minus 2 is minus 4, add 1. This will cancel out, leaving you with just 1. And the last one, the answer to that is 4. Now, once you've got this, you get 2 marks. If you got any one wrong, you lose a mark. If you got more than one wrong, you'll get 0 marks. The next bit asks you to plot the graph of x squared plus 2x plus 1, which is the graph of this table. So here we go. So we know we're going to get a U-shaped curve, a quadratic or a parabola. So we'll start with minus 3 and 4. Minus 3 across and 4 up. The first point goes there. Minus 2 across and 1 up, which is going to go between 0 and 2. Minus 1 across and 0 up, so stays at minus 1 there. 0 across and 1 up, which is there. 1 across and 4 up there. The next one is 2 across and 9 up, so 2 across and 9 is there. And the last one is 3 across and 16, which is up there. Once you've got that, you should see the shape of a curve. All you do is get your pencil and draw a smooth curve going straight through all the points. It doesn't have to be straight as long as it's a curve. that would get you 2 marks. If, for instance, you made a mistake on this bit and you carried it forward onto there, you'll still get 2 marks for the curve, even though you've lost a mark for that. So that's how you draw a quadratic curve. Question 12 asks us to solve 4x squared plus x minus 7 equals 0. And there's a little clue here. It says give your answer to 2 decimal places, which means we definitely need to use a calculator. But more importantly, this is telling us to solve this quadratic, we need to use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula, you should memorize formula. And the formula is as follows. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. You have to have that in your memory so you can use it anytime. So all we're doing is just substituting it, where a is equal to 4, so the coefficient of x squared is 4, b is equal to the number in front of that is 1, and c is negative 7. So this is what we're going to substitute, because this formula is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So now it's a matter of sensibly, without rushing, putting it into your calculator. So I'm going to just write the steps down, and it always helps to have them in brackets. If you don't put them in brackets, the calculator sometimes doesn't calculate it properly. So minus b, so I've got minus 1, plus or minus b squared, which is 1 squared, minus 4, times by a, which is 4, and c, which is minus 7. And again, notice how I'm putting them in a calculator, because that's in a bracket, because it helps the calculator work it out. 2a, 2 times by a, which is 4. Once you've done that, you can type it all in your calculator. So you'll do minus 1 plus, you ignore this minus first, you just do the plus version, type it all in the calculator, and you get a long answer, but you round the first answer to 1.20. The second answer, you can leave all the numbers in the calculator, just use the cursor to go back and change the plus into a minus. So you put that number, put the negative sign in, and then you press equals, and the answer should be 1.45 to 2 decimal places. Question 11. Question 11 is a 5-mark question. It's a quadratic simultaneous equation. So you've got a quadratic and a linear equation at the same time. So with these questions, you have to do it really carefully in steps so that you don't make a mistake. So all you're going to do in the first bit is you're going to make one of the linear version, the linear one without the quadratic, you're going to make something the subject of the formula. In this case, you can make y or you can make x. I'm going to choose y. So I'm going to take away x from both sides. So I've made y the subject of the formula. That's step 1. Then I'm going to substitute the current y that I've worked out into the quadratic y on the top equation. So if I substitute that in, I get x squared for this plus y, I'll put in the bracket, y, the new y in terms of x is 7 minus x, all squared, equals 25. So that will get you the first mark. Then you're going to expand the bracket and simplify it. X squared, so it's a double bracket, so make sure you expand it like a double bracket. A lot of students do this, they'll say that's going to be 7 squared, which is 49 minus x squared. That won't be right. You have to expand it and simplify it like you would do for a double bracket, because there's a middle part to it as well. So if I expand that, this is x squared, 7 squared is 49, minus 2 times the product, which is going to be 14x. Then I'm going to have plus x squared equal to 25. Once you've got that, you can now simplify it, collect all the x's together. So x squares together first. So you have 2x squared. Then you've got minus 49 minus 14x. I'm going to make it all equal to 0, so I'm going to shift that 25 over. 49, take away 25. When I do that, I get 24, and all that will now equal 0 because everything shifted to one side. Now, you look at this equation and see, is there any way I can simplify that? Then you should realize that, yes, you can divide the whole equation by 2, and when you do that, you're left with x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. Once you've got that, you can now factorize it as you would normally do. It's a quadratic, so you get 2 brackets and 2 numbers at times to give you 12 and add to give you minus 7. So if we try 4 times 3, which is 12, to get a positive 12 when you multiply and a negative 7 when you add, both have to be negative. Minus 4 times 3 is positive 12, minus 3 take away 4 is 7. Equal that to 0, and then you solve it. X equals 4, shift that over, x equals 3. Those are your x coordinates, and we're not finished. There's one more step left, and that step is to substitute it to find the corresponding y value. So all we're going to do is now we're going to get these two, we're going to substitute into y equals 7 minus x, which is over there if you remember. So when we substitute that, we're left with, for the first one, when x equals 4, y is going to be equal to 7 minus 4, which is 3. So y equals 3, put a box around it. When x equals 3, y is going to be equal to 7 minus 3, which is 4. So y is equal to 4. And the final answer, you can write it as a coordinate, or you can just leave your answers as x is 4, x is 3, y is 3, and y is 4. Or a lot of people prefer to write it in terms of coordinates. So you got 4 corresponds with this y, which is 3, and 3, the x coordinate here, corresponds with this y coordinate, which is 4. And that's your 5 marks. 1 mark for this, 1 mark for substituting it and equating it to 0. Second mark, the third mark for factorizing. 4th mark for finding both the x values, and the 5th mark for finding both the y values. And that's it. Next question is question 14. So we've got an algebraic fraction there, and it's asking us to simplify the algebraic fraction. So first things first, top we need to factorize if possible. If you recognize from earlier questions, this is the difference of 2 squares. So these are 2 squares, and that's the difference of them. Difference of 2 squares. So you have p, square root of p squared is p, square root of 9 is 3, and then the conjugate of that is p plus 3. Bottom line to factorize, 2 is common, so 2 comes outside the bracket. P, 2 times by 3 is p. And usually when you have an algebraic fraction which requires simplifying, some things will always cancel. In this case, the p plus 3 cancels out to give us 1, so these will cancel out, leaving you with a final answer of p minus 3 over 2. So that's your final answer. 1 mark for factorizing, 1 mark for the answer. Question B. So the question says write 1 over x plus 4 plus 2 over x minus 4 as a single fraction in its simplest form. This is worth 3 marks. So we've got an algebraic fraction here, so we need to make a common denominator. So the first thing we need to try and do is to find out what the common denominator is. In this case, we're simply going to multiply the x minus 4 by x plus 4 here. So our common denominator is going to be this. So in order to get x from x plus 4 to x minus 4, I've times this by x minus 4. So I need to times the top of the first equation by x minus 4. Similarly, I've already in this next fraction, I've already got x minus 4 as the denominator, I want to get x plus 4, so I'm going to times it by x plus 4. And in order to do that, I need to do the same to the top. So 2 times by x plus 4. That's your first mark for making a common denominator. The second mark is for tidying it up. So now we've got one big common denominator. Let's work out the top line. If you expand the bracket, x plus 4 times 1 is, sorry, that'll be x minus 4. This will be plus 2x plus 8. And the bottom, I can write it as a common denominator of x plus 4, x minus 4. Just tidy up a little bit more. X plus 2x is 3x. Minus 4, add 8 is plus 4. X plus 4, and then x minus 4. And that's my final answer. So 1 mark for common denominator, 1 mark for simplifying it, and 1 mark for the final answer. Question C, question 14C. Question asks us to express as a single fraction 3x plus 1 over 4 plus 2x minus 1 over 3. Same again, we're going to make a common denominator. This one's actually slightly easier. The common denominator between 3 and 4 is going to be 12. If you're not sure, you can simply multiply them together. So common denominator is 12. So if I do it on this side, to make a common denominator of 12, I've times this equation by 3. So I'm going to times the top by 3. 3 times by 3x plus 1. To make this into a 12, I've times this equation by 4. So I'm going to times the top by 4. So that's step 1. Step 2, let's tidy it up. Expand the brackets. 9x plus 3 plus 8 x minus 4, all divided by 12. That says 8, just in case you've not figured my handwriting out. And last bit of tidying, 9x plus 8 is going to give me 17x. 3 minus 4 is minus 1 over 12. We can't simplify that any further, so that's the final answer. Question 15. Okay, in this question you definitely need a calculator. The question says an approximate solution to an equation is found using the iterative process xn plus 1 square root of xn plus 10 blah blah blah. It looks really complicated. However, if you know the technique to this, iteration is actually dead easy, but you do need a calculator to help you. So xn plus 1, all that means, the n plus 1 means the next term. This means the current term. The xn means current term. And this x1 is the first term that they've given you. First term. Okay. When I do my video on iteration, I'll go into a lot more detail with this one. So it says work out the value of x2 and x3. We know x1 equals 3. To work out x2, all we're going to do, x2 will be the next term. So that will be 1 plus 1 is 2. So to work out x2, all we do is you get the existing term, the current term. The current term is 3. We're going to get this and add 10 to it. And then square root it. When you put that in your calculator, square root of 13, you get 3.6055127, blah blah blah. Then now this big number has become your current term. You simply get this number and you put it into the calculator again instead of the 3, and you get the third value for x. So here you'll have 3.605 blah blah blah, whatever you got for that. Add 10. If you type that in your calculator, you get another big complicated number, which is 3.68857 blah 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 blah. So we're going to just write the answers down to this here on the lines provided. So The first answer was 3.6055127. The second answer is this, 3.6888570 blah blah blah. It's not asking us to what to round it to, so we just leave it as it is. And that's it. Work out the solution to 3 decimal places. Now this is required in this quick part. You definitely need to know how to use the answer button on your calculator, and I'll show you how to use that in a different video. But all you need to do is write down the answer you get for x1. So in your calculator you'll type in 3, then you'll press the equals button, then your calculator remembers that in its memory. Then all you're going to do is you're going to put the number into your calculator. So for example, so we found x1, so to find x2 for instance, what we would have done using the answer button is press the answer button plus 10 and then equals. That will give us x2, which we've already got, which is 3.605 blah blah blah. And then you just continue to press the equal button. You just continue to press it until your answer stops rounding to 3 decimal places. So I'll just write the ones that I've got so far. So you just continue to press the answer button, and then you'll notice that it starts to stop rounding to 3 decimal places at 3.702. So at x7 I got 3.702. If I continue doing that, it will stay at 3.702 to 3 decimal places. So this is your final answer. That will get you the last mark. Question C. A sequence is defined by the term-to-term rule un plus 1, un squared minus 8un plus 17. Again, it sounds really complicated, but it's exactly the same thing. All you're going to do is use your calculator again. You've been given the first value for u, which is 2. You're going to work out what u2 is, u3 is, and u100. So again, you put in your calculator to work out what u2 is. You're going to get u1, which is 2, squared, minus 8 times by 2, plus 17. When you type that in your calculator, you get the answer to be 5. And then if you use the answer button, you would have pressed 2 and then equals, and you can just press equals again. The next answer was 2. And then you'll notice that u2 is 5, u3 is 2, u4 will be 5, u5 will be 2. So you'll notice the pattern, it goes 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 2. Using that, you can deduce that the 100th term, because it's an even number, since u2 is 5, u100 will also be 5. So you can just follow the pattern and work out the answer to that one. And that's just worth 1 mark. Question 16 is on functions and inverse functions. So the first one is about inverse functions. So the question's saying f of x is 2x squared minus 1, find the inverse function. So the shortcut to this is, instead of calling it f of x, which looks really complicated and pretty ugly, we're just going to call this equation y equals 2x squared minus 1. Once we've done that, we're going to rearrange and make x the subject. So to make x the subject, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Y add 1 equals 2x squared. Then I'm going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. Y add 1. Divide by 2 is equal to x squared. And then to get rid of the square from both sides, I'm going to square root both sides. And I'm going to be left with square root of y plus 1 over 2 equals x. Now, nearly done there. The last bit is, remember at the start I called f of x y. I'm just going to go back and replace that f of x and call that inverse function of x is equal to, so wherever I see a y, I'm going to replace it with an x. X plus 1 over 2 square root sign. And that's your answer. Okay. In a different exam, it'll probably be worth 2 marks. In this one, it's only worth 1. Number 17. Okay, so this is quite a tricky one. It says f of x is kx plus 3. The function g of x is 2x minus 4. Given that g f of 2 is 34, find the value of k. So all we're going to do is we're going to find this composite function g f of 2 first. So we can work out what f of 2 is first by substituting 2 into the f function wherever we see an x. So we have k times by x, which is 2, plus 3. Oops, so all I'm doing there is I'm working out f of 2, so we always work backwards when we do composite functions. So f of 2, wherever I see an f function, if I see an x, I'm going to replace it with the number 2, and that's all I've done. I'm substituting it with 2, so that becomes 2k plus 3. That's my f of 2. Now next I'm going to substitute that into the g function. So this has now become my new x, and I'm going to substitute that into the g function wherever I see an x. So g f of 2 is going to be 2 times by, wherever I see an x, I replace it with the new function 2k plus 3, and then there's a takeaway 4 there. Simplify that, expand the brackets, that's 4k plus 6 minus 4. And remember the question says given that gf of 2 is equal to 34, so I'll equal that to 34, and then it'll help me find what k is. So if I simplify that, 4k plus 6 take away 4 is 2 equals 34, and then I'm just going to move all the numbers to one side, leaving me with the letter k. So 4k, if I take away 2 from both sides, I'm left with 32. Divide both sides by 4, and k is equal to 32 divided by 4 gives me 8. So my answer for this question is k equals 8. 1 mark for finding f of 2. 2nd mark for working out the function for g f of 2 and equating it to 34. And the last mark for finding that k is equal to 8. And that looks like that's it. So that was the HA paper. So the higher / intermediate paper, I'd say. So make sure you go through the video. If you need to press pause at any time, press pause. Find out what you can't do. Slow it down, play it fast, however you need to do it. And make sure you're marking each of the questions. Once you've marked it, fill in the front cover sheet so you can see which questions you got right and which ones you didn't, which ones you need more work on. And later on, if you have a look at your folders, I will upload some questions based on these topics that you've struggled with, and you can practice some more. Okay, so this is Mr Mohid from Aim High Private Tuition. I see you guys shortly. Take care. Bye.